Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to roll up our sleeves and get down to business. Procurement, specifically. I know. I know it's not exactly the most exhilarating topic at a cocktail party.
Well, it can be if you're talking about saving money and streamlining processes.
Okay, fair point. And that's exactly what we're diving into today, right? We're talking about practical procurement strategies that are specifically designed for, well, us regular folks, small and medium-sized businesses. None of that corporate jargon here.
We're talking real-world tips and tricks that you can actually implement, even if you're wearing a million different hats.
And the best part, I actually stumbled upon this fantastic blog post all about it. It breaks down those complex procurement processes into manageable steps that even I could understand.
Because who wants to sift through pages of technical jargon when you're already short on time?
Seriously, ain't nobody got time for that. So let's jump right in, shall we? This blog post kicks things off with something called the procurement life cycle.
The life cycle, it's like the roadmap to successful purchasing. It takes you through every stage, from identifying what you need to scoping out potential suppliers, choosing the best fit, nailing down those contract details, actually getting your hands on the goods or services, making sure everything goes smoothly with the contract.
Oh, and let's not forget actually using what you bought and figuring out what to do with it when you're done.
Exactly. It covers the entire journey, and the blog post breaks it down to these really digestible stages.
Which is super helpful because, honestly, when I hear procurement life cycle, my brain kind of glazes over. It just sounds so, I don't know, complicated.
It can feel that way for sure. But think of it like a checklist, a roadmap for making smart purchasing decisions every step of the way.
I can get behind a good checklist.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, one thing that really jumped out at me in this blog post is this idea of using a scoring system to evaluate suppliers.
Ah, yes. This is where data-driven decisions come into play. Even for smaller businesses, having a system for tracking supplier performance can be a game changer.
So instead of just going with your gut or whoever you remember having a decent experience with last time, you have actual data to back up your decision.
Exactly. Imagine having a simple spreadsheet where you've tracked, say, delivery times, product quality, responsiveness to issues.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense
Yep.
because we've all been there, right? You're in a rush, you need something quickly, and you end up going with the first supplier that pops into your head.
And then you're stuck with, shall we say, less than ideal results. But with a scoring system, you can make those decisions strategically and avoid those, oh no, not this again moments.
Plus, it would be super handy to be able to whip out that spreadsheet in a negotiation, right? Like, hey, your delivery times have been a little shaky lately, so.
Absolutely. It gives you leverage and helps you build stronger supplier relationships in the long run.
Okay, so we've covered the life cycle, but there's another biggie I want to tackle: contract management.
Contracts. They can feel like a necessary evil, but they're really the backbone of those strong supplier relationships we were just talking about.
But let's be real, they can also be a huge headache, especially when you're juggling a million other things.
You're telling me. It's a lot to keep track of. The terms, the deadlines, the renewals.
And the different versions, the approvals, the signatures. It's like, how are we supposed to stay on top of all of that?
Well, the blog post breaks down the contract management cycle into manageable stages, just like with the procurement life cycle. It talks about things like requesting the contract, making sure you understand what you're agreeing to, getting those all-important approvals,
Making sure it's signed, sealed, and delivered, keeping it safe.
and, of course, monitoring the contract to make sure everyone's holding up their end of the bargain.
But you know what really caught my eye? The idea of using contract management software, even for smaller businesses.
Oh, absolutely. There's some amazing tools out there that can make your life so much easier, and you don't have to break the bank either.
Seriously, because I always figured that was something only the big corporations used.
Nope. There are tons of user-friendly, even free options available that can streamline your entire process.
So no more frantically searching through emails or digging through filing cabinets trying to find that one crucial document.
Exactly. Imagine having all your contract deadlines, key terms, supplier contact info, everything organized and accessible in one central hub.
Okay, that does sound kind of amazing. Can you give us an example of one of those tools? Like, if someone's listening and thinking, okay, I need this in my life yesterday, where do they even start?
Sure. One popular option that's super user-friendly and has a great free plan is called Contractually. I think they even have a mobile app. You can track key dates, send automatic reminders, even do e-signatures.
Okay, so no more excuses for missing those deadlines. I love it. So we've covered the life cycle and contract management, but this blog post also mentions something called the category management process. And honestly, just hearing those words together makes me a little
I
nervous.
get it. It sounds a little intimidating at first, but trust me, it's not as scary as it sounds.
Okay, because when I hear category management, I think like spreadsheets and flowcharts and way too much time spent analyzing data.
Well, there might be a little bit of that, but at its core, category management is really about being strategic with your spending. Instead of just reacting to what's urgent, you're taking a step back and looking at the big picture.
Okay, so it's less, oh no, the printer's out of ink again, and more, let's analyze our spending patterns and come up with a plan to streamline this whole process.
Exactly. It's like, imagine you're at the grocery store, right? You wouldn't just wander the aisles and hope for the best. You probably have a list, maybe even a meal plan for the week.
Yeah.
Category management is kind of like that, but for your business purchases.
Okay, I'm liking this analogy. So how do we actually put this grocery shopping strategy into action for our businesses? Where do we even begin?
Well, the blog post breaks it down into a few key steps. First things first, you got to define your spending categories. What are the biggest chunks of your budget going towards? Is it office supplies, marketing materials, raw materials for production?
So basically figure out where all the money's going.
Exactly. Once you have a clear picture of that, you can start to prioritize. Which categories have the most potential for savings? Or which ones, if you were to optimize them, could give you a competitive edge?
Okay, so it's not just about cutting costs. It's also about like making strategic investments.
Absolutely.
Right.
And that leads us to the next step, gathering information. How much are you actually spending in each category? Who are your key suppliers? How have they been performing? All that good stuff.
Because knowledge is power, right?
100%. This is where you can start to analyze those spending patterns, spot any red flags, and brainstorm ways to optimize.
This is starting to feel less intimidating and more like, wait a minute, I could be saving a lot of money here.
I know, right? And that brings us to the fun part, creating a game plan. What are your specific goals for each category? Do you want to reduce costs? Find more reliable suppliers? Negotiate better terms? Once you have those goals in mind, you can start to develop a strategy.
So it's kind of like setting those New Year's resolutions, but for your business spending.
Exactly. Except hopefully these ones stick a little better than those resolutions to go to the gym every day.
Hey, I'm not the only one who breaks those, right?
Definitely not. But okay, back to procurement. Once you have your game plan, you put it into action, track your progress, make adjustments as needed. It's an ongoing process, but it can make a huge difference in the long run.
This all makes sense, but I'm noticing a theme here. Collaboration. This blog post keeps mentioning the importance of cross-department collaboration, and I'm wondering how smaller businesses, where everyone's already wearing multiple hats, are supposed to make time for that. Like, are we supposed to add even more meetings to our already jam-packed schedules?
I hear you. Nobody wants another meeting. But the good news is it doesn't have to be a huge formal thing. Even just quick informal check-ins can go a long way.
So, like, a quick huddle in the break room instead of a full-blown meeting?
Exactly. Or maybe a shared online document where each department can give a quick update on what they're working on, any challenges they're facing.
I like that, keeping everyone in the loop without adding a ton of extra meetings. Because seriously, my inbox is already overflowing with meeting invites.
I feel you. But okay, we've covered the life cycle, contract management, and even dipped our toes into the world of category management. Are you ready to tackle one more concept from this blog post?
Bring it on. As long as it doesn't involve more meetings, I'm game.
Okay, good. Because this one's all about continuous improvement. Specifically, something called the PDCA cycle. Have you heard of it?
PDCA cycle. Vaguely. Rings a bell, but I'd be lying if I said I could tell you exactly what it is off the top of my head.
No worries, it's a classic for a reason. It stands for Plan, Do, Check, Act, and it's basically a framework for making continuous improvement feel less like climbing a mountain and more like a scenic hike.
Okay, I was going to say continuous improvement sounds great in theory, but in reality it can feel super overwhelming, especially when you're already swamped just trying to keep up with everything.
Right, like who has time for constant overhauls? But that's where the beauty of the PDCA cycle comes in. It breaks down that continuous improvement process into smaller, more manageable bites.
Okay, so instead of trying to change everything overnight, you can, like, test out a new approach on a smaller scale.
Exactly. And the blog post had this great tip about starting with pilot programs.
Ooh, Ooh, pilot programs. I like the sound of that. So instead of like revamping your entire procurement process, you pick one small thing to focus on and see how it goes.
Exactly. It's like dipping your toes in the water before diving head first. If the pilot program's a success, great. You can roll it out more broadly. But if it's not, well, at least you learned something valuable without disrupting your entire operation.
Okay, that feels much less intimidating. I could definitely get behind that. But even with a pilot program, getting honest feedback from your team can be tricky, especially when everyone's already busy. Do you have any advice for navigating that? How do you get people on board with trying something new?
That's a great question, and it's definitely something to be mindful of. One approach that often works well is framing it as a collaborative problem-solving exercise rather than like criticism.
So instead of saying, hey, I think you're doing this wrong, it's more like, hey, I'm trying out this new approach. Do you think it could help us streamline things and make everyone's lives easier?
Exactly. When you approach it as a team effort, emphasizing the shared benefits, people are generally much more open to sharing their honest thoughts and feedback.
That's a really good tip. And speaking of making everyone's lives easier, which honestly should be the goal of any new process we implement, it's like we're waving a magic wand over our businesses and making all that procurement stress disappear.
Well, we haven't quite mastered telekinesis yet.
Okay, fair enough, no magic wands. But hey, who needs magic when you've got these awesome strategies?
Right. And you know what's even better? You don't have to do it all at once.
That's music to my ears.
Yes.
I'm all about those small steps, big impact kind of vibes.
You got it. Pick one thing, see how it goes, and build from there.
Because even small improvements can snowball into something pretty amazing over time.
Exactly. And, as we've been chatting about all these different tactics, I keep coming back to this idea of, well, being intentional.
Oh, I like that. So instead of just, like, reacting to every little fire that pops up, you're taking charge and approaching things strategically.
You nailed it. That's what I find so empowering about these concepts. They give you a framework to make those intentional decisions, even when you're super busy.
Working smarter, not harder. Am I right?
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
So for our listeners who are out there ready to conquer the world of procurement, what's one final thought you want to leave them with?
Yeah, give us that golden nugget of wisdom.
All right, here it is. You've got this. Seriously, you have the power to take your procurement process from a source of stress to, well, a strategic advantage for your business. And it all starts with one small change.
I love it. One small change. It could be something as simple as creating that supplier scorecard or trying out a free trial of that contract management software.
Exactly. Every journey, no matter how big, starts with a single step.
Beautifully said. And on that note, a huge thank you to you for sharing your expertise with us today. This has been incredibly insightful. I feel like I learned so much.
Anytime. I always enjoy our conversations.
And to our awesome listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of procurement. We'll catch you on our next deep dive. Until then, happy procuring.